I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This is Homebrew Review, and today we are looking at QB by Andrew Davie. And this game has a lot of history behind it. For a start, it was actually an Atari 800 homebrew game written by Davie way back in 1984. And in the late 90s or early 2000s, he decided to take it upon himself as a challenge to port it to Atari 2600 and keep as much of the original gameplay intact as he could. As you can see here, he was a success in those efforts. QB did come out in 2001, first in a limited edition sold only at Philly Classic 2001. 50 copies were made, and then later going into general release with a new label designed in a QB label contest at AtariAge.com, which is where you can still get the cartridge along with a full color manual to this very day, and you can buy it in either a PAL or an NTSC version depending on the region that you live in. The gameplay manages to be both simple and complex at the very same time. It's simple in that you can only move around tiles. You move the tile you are standing on by pushing up, down, left, or right, and if you're on an adjacent tile, you can jump to that one and then start moving that. But you can only move from one tile to another when the two are next to each other. Otherwise, you are just moving the tile that you are currently on. And if you have an extra tile waiting in the wings, it will not move into the playfield until you move to the left and give it room to scroll into place. And the reason you would need those extra tiles is that you are trying to match the pattern in the radar. If you see that image in the upper right corner that looks like a smaller version of the playfield, those tiles are where you want the tiles in the main playfield to go. You want to match the pattern 1-to-1. If a block's in the lower left-hand corner in the radar, that's where you want it in your playfield as well. You can also pick up fruits for extra bonus points by moving to a tile adjacent to the fruit and jumping on it. But you have to be careful. Sometimes when you see an item appearing and you think it's going to be fruit, it actually turns out to be a monster. Now eventually you can wait out the monsters and they turn back into fruit, but that takes time and it's not always going to happen at the time that's convenient to you, because some of them can actually move their tiles around and give chase to you. So as you can see, simple yet complex. The way to score big points is to match the pattern of tiles. The way to score bonus points is to pick up fruits. And the way to survive is to avoid the monsters that are either on the tiles that you need or that are giving chase to you while you're trying to arrange your tiles. There's lots of depth to QB. There's a lot to explore, a lot to do, and of course, the basic challenge that makes all great Atari VCS games a fantastic time. You are your own end boss. If you want to get to the end of the game, you beat your previous high score. You challenge yourself. It's not about beating the game and getting a message that says, "Congratulations, you have emerged victorious. Go forth dauntlessly and try again. It was a trick devised by Satan." No, there's none of that here. It's very simple. You just get better and score more points and keep track of what your best score from before was, and then you go for that. Whatever you can do, try to do better. It's only going to be you versus yourself. Unless, of course, you do some sort of high score contest on a Atari Age or any other message board where everybody does their best and shares a screenshot and you try to best each other. But basically, you are challenging yourself. That's what QB is all about. A few more notes about this game. The winning artwork for the QB label contest was designed by David Exton and has accompanied the cartridge since 2002 on the AtariAge.com store, but a holiday edition of QB was also released in 2004 with its own custom label and a design to reflect the Christmas season, so you can get two different versions of QB out there, but the one that's available to play as a demo for free on AtariAge.com is the standard QB for Atari 2600, and you should definitely check it out. I know that opinions may differ on whether or not playing Atari VCS is worth it in the 2020s. It's 40-year-old hardware, but the good thing about that is it makes it very easy to emulate. The bad thing about that is it's not very powerful. But I still maintain that working within the limitations, good programmers can do great things, and I feel that Andrew Davies succeeded here by making a simple to play but challenging to master game. And if you can't do that on any platform, it doesn't matter whether it's overly powerful or underpowerful. You have to create something that's compelling, and the gameplay is as compelling, if not more so, than any graphical or sound limitations. It doesn't have a plethora of either, but it looks good enough, especially given the Atari 2600 limitations. I think it actually looks far better than many games that were commercially released. Like, which game would you say looks better? QB or E.T.? I don't think you have to think about that one for very long if you've played both of those games, which really, I'm not trying to slag on E.T. because everybody does, but I would take this over that. It's not the fault of the programmer. He was put onto a rush job because they wanted to get it out for the holiday season, and it was a big movie blockbuster hit for Steven Spielberg, so they wanted that to tie into their merchandising of the movie. They were just desperate. Everybody was working with limited time doing the best they could. E.T. was a product of its time, whereas QB is a product that was not rushed by time because it started back in 1984 and didn't come to the Atari VCS until 2001. There was no hurry here, so Andrew Davies was able to tweak out every little aspect of the gameplay to make it function smoothly, to get some impressively large sprites on a system that had very limited sprites. There's obviously some trickery to that. What you're seeing is not necessarily a sprite in the traditional sense, but it functions like a sprite. I don't want to get too esoteric into coding. That's not really my area. That's for people like Modern Vintage Gamer. I'm sure he could explain exactly what I mean by that. But regardless, whether it's the background layer or the foreground layer or a missile or a ball or a legitimate sprite as we would know it, it works. At the end of the day, that's what matters, right? Does it work? Yes, it does. Is it fun to play? Yes, it is. Do I recommend paying $25 for a cartridge if you own an Atari VCS or a Retron 77 or some kind of device that can accept Atari cartridges from the original VCS, aka Atari 2600? Well, yes. Yes, I do. The answer to all of these questions is yes. If I were to rank homebrew games on that tier list like they do for all kinds of different matters of media, movies, video games, books, comics, manga, everything gets ranked on tier lists these days, right? Well, if I was putting QB on a tier list of Atari 2600 homebrews, it wouldn't be S rank. I reserve that for things that are extra special like Thrust Plus. But this could go into like an A or a B tier. I would be perfectly comfortable with that because it is definitely above average and it will be worth your time to play more than once. You will want to play it again and again. I certainly do. I've had this cartridge since the early 2000s and I keep coming back to it, whether it's on the original hardware or playing it in emulation as I'm doing right now to record this footage and demonstrate the game to you. This is far from Andrew Davies' only project, so be sure to poke around AtariAge.com, click on his name, look at the list of things that he's done, and try out many of them for yourself, including QB, and I think you will have a very good time. See, he's a very skilled programmer who knows how to make things work right and be fun to play. Not just work, but be fun. QB is both. It works and it's fun. So Andrew Davies, you get props over here. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. I thank you for watching. And as always, there are things you can do to help support the channel. You can like this video. You can hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. You can share it on social media or your YouTube community page. And most of all, come back every day for new content. I have weekly editions of Retro Hunting Adventures on Mondays, the PC Engine Files on Tuesdays, Homebrew Reviews on Wednesdays, and Genesis Does on Thursdays. But there's new content every single day.